Welcome to my channel where Op shuts off the water to an HOA Karen's house. Our next Reddit post is from Nosy Neighbor. This happened several years ago when I lived in a neighborhood with a homeowners association. One of the rules was that you could not use your yard sprinklers during certain hours due to water restrictions. Also, you were not allowed to fill up a pool past a certain level during the summer months. The water level was measured by the HOA and they would fine you if you went over that limit. There were 3 houses on my block that had pools. One of them was the HOA president's house, which was unfortunate for her because she loved to have her pool at max capacity. She would fill it up every week. There were 2 other houses with pools, one of which was right across from me. The people there only used their pool a couple times per month. The third pool belonged to an older couple who hardly ever used it. One day in mid-July, I noticed that the HOA president's grass was wilting. I thought nothing of it since she was on vacation and her house had an automatic sprinkler system. A few days later, I noticed that the grass on the other 2 houses with pools was also wilting. I mentioned this to my wife and she said, "What a coincidence. Those 2 houses are having problems with their pool filters and haven't been running their pumps." I thought that was interesting but didn't think much more about it until one evening when I was getting home from work around 5 p.m. There was a line of cars driving very slowly through our neighborhood. As I got closer, I noticed that all the cars were going to the HOA president's house. I decided to follow them, see what was going on. I parked behind the last car and walked up to the front door. I knocked and asked what was going on. It turned out that these women were friends of the HOA president and they were complaining about how the HOA president's pool was empty and they wanted to swim but couldn't. They were asking if they could use my pool instead. I told them no, that I didn't know whose pool was empty, but I wasn't going to let strangers swim in my pool. They started begging me to let them swim in my pool and I told them again that I wasn't comfortable with that. They ended up leaving. The next day, I noticed that the HOA president's pool was full again. I thought maybe she had fixed the problem with her pump. A few days later, I was outside and saw those same women taking their kids out of the car and heading toward my pool. I yelled out to them and asked what they were doing. One of them yelled back, "We're going swimming," turned and walked toward my pool. I immediately ran to my backyard and shut off the water to my pool pump. This made my pool go from full to about half full in just a few minutes. I then called the HOA president and told her that her friends were using my pool and I was draining it. She got very angry and told me that I had broken the rules and would be fined. I told her that I had a right to use my pool and that I would do whatever I needed to protect my property. That weekend, I put up a fence around my pool. After I did this, I noticed that the HOA president's pool was empty again. She must have been telling her friends about what I did because none of them ever asked me again. About 2 weeks later, I noticed that the HOA president's pool was still empty and the grass was wilting. Then I saw her pulling out her sprinklers. I guess she finally realized that her actions had consequences. It's amazing how dumb some people are. Like, yes, you pay HOA fees. Of course, you have to abide by the rules. And clearly she wasn't doing that. But beyond that, like, come on. The HOA president of all people should know the rules. Up. You really shouldn't have drained your pool. That is a lot of wasted water. I mean, I get it. You didn't want these people swimming in your pool, but still, you know, the water, it goes to waste. But I love how Op says, I have a right to use my pool. Yes, you do. You paid for it. And then the HOA president's like, well, yeah, but you're breaking the rules. Yeah, well, I have a right to break the rules because you're not following them yourself. Good for Op for standing up to these Karens. And I love the update where Op puts up the fence, you know. Sometimes, you just gotta do what you gotta do. Sometimes, you gotta literally put up a fence. But, anyways, that is today's entitled People Story. And if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also hit that subscribe button because I put out new videos every single day.